the International Disability Alliance, and the Business Innovation Group of the UN SDG, we'd like to welcome you this afternoon and thank you for joining us in celebration of International Day of Persons with Disabilities 2021. My name is Cara Elizabeth Yarkhan, and before I begin, I would like to share a visual description to make sure that everyone feels included. I am a biracial South Asian woman with long black hair and green eyes, wearing a silver sequin top and black dress pants, and I use a power wheelchair. I've spent much of my career working with the United Nations, specifically with World Food Programme and UNICEF. In 2007, just after being diagnosed with a progressive muscle wasting condition, I went to work in Angola, a posting that I loved. Back then, there was no non-discrimination policy protecting the rights of staff with disabilities, so I did not disclose, even though I needed accommodations. No one asked why I was limping, so I didn't say anything. Angola was a difficult duty station. But even in less difficult duty stations where I worked, China, Madagascar, Thailand, and Mozambique, not being able to disclose and have the support I needed was not only emotionally and physically exhausting, it was so stressful that the disease progressed rapidly. By 2011, when I went to Haiti after the earthquake, I was using 2 canes and leg braces to walk. Only because UNICEF had by then issued a protection policy did I disclose, albeit with trepidation. Many people opposed my appointment, questioning my capacity to do my job because of my physical impairments. Luckily, I had the unwavering support of my country representative. Nevertheless, some colleagues would not drive in the same vehicle with me because they feared that I was contagious. Many sister agencies told me that I should not have been allowed to come. Physical infrastructure everywhere, even on the UN logistical base where we worked in containers, it was not built with universal design in mind. Finding barrier-free accommodations was impossible. Back then, I wish that we had had a disability inclusion strategy and this partnership. This year, International Day's theme is the leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. And with that in mind, we are especially proud to present a global strategic partnership led by the Business Innovation Group of the UN SDG to advance disability inclusion across UN business operations in line with the UN's disability inclusion strategy, and using the proven expertise of the private sector in having implemented similar initiatives. This partnership will engage the UN and private and social sector partners to streamline disability inclusion common services through the business operations strategy, a common framework that maps and supports collaboration among all UN entities at the country level. The partnership will address inclusion in 3 initial areas: inclusive human resources, physical accessibilities of the common premises, and ICT and digital accessibility. The partners have already identified and begun to roll out these initiatives collaboratively in 10 countries, with a plan to expand to all 131 UN country teams, with the goal to reach and benefit thousands with the collaboration of external partners such as foundations and the private and public sector present today who supported these initiatives. The United Nations is in a unique position to scale and advance disability inclusion, and we know, though, that we cannot do this alone. We acknowledge the private, public, and social sectors bring invaluable contributions in terms of technical expertise, networks, and financial resources. Thus, we are looking to do this together. This afternoon, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our speakers with whom you will have an opportunity to hear from and interact with during the program. Today, we will hear remarks from the following people: Antigua and Barbuda Ambassador to the United Nations, His Excellency Ambassador Webson. Honorable Abdullah Shahid, President of the UN General Assembly. Under Secretary General Ana Maria Menendez, Senior Advisor on Policy to the Secretary General. Vladimir Shuk, Executive Director of the International Disability Alliance. Pelgrina Shimanu with UNDP in Namibia, and Resident Coordinator of the United Nations in Fiji, Sanaka Samrasina. There are two parts to our program this afternoon. In the first part, our speakers will share their perspectives on creating more inclusive and UN operations that are accessible and programs, followed by a few comments from the audience. In the second part, those of us who are here in the room, we will have the opportunity to discuss how to drive disability inclusion together. And for those of you who are online, we invite you to contact us to continue the conversation after the event. At this time, I would like to invite to the front His Excellency Ambassador Webson, the permanent representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations. Ambassador Webson has been in the role since 2014. In 2019, he was appointed as co-facilitator on the Steering Committee on Accessibility and continues to co-chair that committee to date. He also founded the Friends of Vision at the United Nations. Ambassador Webson is also well published on development, education, and aspects of disability.
Thank you very much.
And the question that I have for Ambassador Webson is, why is now the right time for this global strategic partnership to advance UNDIS and disability inclusion in UN programs and business operations?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And good evening, Excellencies, colleagues, friends. Let me join the chair, the moderator, in welcoming you to this event and to share some thoughts with you on the subject of disability, the global partnership and inclusion. So the moderator raised a question as to why this is the right time. You know, many years ago, when I served in another capacity in a different organization in Africa, I was asked the question about inclusion. And I said to them, inclusion is not about it's not a project. Inclusion is about a way of life. It is about values. In creating, it's not creating moments. It is about the respect we have for each other, for individuals' capabilities, rather than their disability, which underlines where they are. We talk about people's strengths, giving opportunities to fulfill those strengths for the individual to use the work to and working in communities. We talk about creating inclusive services and inclusive opportunities to begin to build and transform humanity, not just an organization. And how do we do that? It's the coming together with things like using this partnership. How do we do that? Is organizations taking responsibility to go outside, to go outside of the box and bring about change. For change is not about the norm. Change is taking the unexpected and creating the moment for it to become the expected. And that's what we do if we are truly about to change what it means to deal with a person. And in fact, I like to say, change what it means to have a disability or to be a person with disability. The time is for the United Nations. We have a big moment, and therefore we got to use this to make a big statement. If we can, Madam Moderator, place persons with disabilities into the roles that you just so aptly described your work but at the time, unfortunately, you could not declare your disability due to the reasons you mentioned. But if we can take the, as we say in the Caribbean, the bull by the horns, I'm not sure if that is the most politic word to say, phrase to use, but if we can place persons with disability into positions that the people not normally would see as for a person with disability, that's the change. I have said to my own team time and time again, when I leave you, I want to know that you see persons with disability differently because of your experience with persons with disability. That's what, and the change is not going to be about having a person with disability only collaborate on issues dealing with disability. It is going to be using the, as I say, what is the, taking the, what is now normal and stepping out into and turning the so-called abnormal into normal. I believe that this is the time for the organization, for the partnership to truly work with the United Nations. And this is the time for the United Nations to make a big statement in the way we place persons with disability. We are coming, we're only what, 8 years away from the fulfillment of what we said, leaving no one behind. If we truly mean that, we have to take risks and take changes and make major changes. If we are 14 years since the UNCRPD, and we can't wait any longer. Now is the time for the partnership to truly blossom within the United Nations. Now is the time for us to come together and make decisions that will allow all persons to truly develop as individuals, and for each person to be respected based on their ability first, rather than us seeing their disability. Now is the time for us to work together to bring about true change. And true change means opening the door wide so that all can pass in, and that the opportunity, irrespective of disability, will create that moment of inclusivity. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Webster. Now I have the privilege of introducing Honorable Abdullah Shahid, who since 2021 serves as the President of the UN General Assembly and has served as the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Maldives since 2018. Mr. Shahid is widely recognized as an exceptional politician and a seasoned diplomat with a long and distinguished career serving in both the government and legislature of Maldives. He played a key role in the Maldives' transition to democracy in 2008 and is the first Moldovan politician to become the president of the UN General Assembly. We'd like to welcome him to the stage.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Excellencies, distinguished friends, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the Permanent Mission of Antigua and Barbuda and the International Disability Alliance and the UN Sustainable Development Group for inviting me to speak. Today, we recognize the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a day for increasing awareness of the situation of persons with disabilities and promoting their rights. This year's theme, leadership and participation of persons with disabilities toward an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world, could not be more fitting. It reminds us that persons with disabilities must be part of any decision-making process around COVID-19, around the achievement of sustainable development goals, or around any other issues relevant to our societies. With more than 1 billion people living with some form of a disability, and 80% of those in developing countries, we must make the extra effort to ensure that they are included and empowered. Collective action and commitment on the inclusion of persons with disabilities is a multi-stakeholder responsibility. The United Nations General Assembly plays a crucial role in this, as evidenced by the 184 states they have become parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This is a clear testament to the solidarity of the international community on the provision and protection of human rights for persons with disabilities. This is further illustrated by the support of member states in activities and programs spearheaded by the group of Friends of Persons with Disabilities and the Friends of Vision. The dedicated participation of member states in the work of the Commission on Social Development, which has a focus on disabilities, continues to be a source of guidance on this front. Equally important are the ongoing efforts of the United Nations system and multilateral system. Together, partners help strengthen the foundation for data collection and information sharing, all of which are integral to the improvement of policies for the inclusion of persons with disabilities. Excellencies, my dear friends, I've shared with you some of the realities and importance of collaboration by member states, yet much remains to be achieved, requiring deeper collaboration beyond member states. Civil society, governments, and multilateral agencies must work together to enhance and strengthen the inclusion of persons with disabilities. As we are constantly reminded by the ongoing pandemic, unity is the only solution for humanity. Everyone must be included. As a president of HOPE, I will continue to advocate for the inclusion of persons with disabilities, for their meaningful participation in the society, and for the assurance that the conversation is echoed across the whole of society. Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shahid. Next, we will hear from Undersecretary General Ana Maria Menendez. Ms. Menendez is the Senior Advisor on Policy to the Secretary General. Prior to joining the United Nations in July 2017, Ms. Menendez was the Ambassador and Permanent Resident of Spain to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva. In a pre-recorded video, USG Menendez will tell us about the UN's approach to disability inclusion and how strategic partnerships and the UN create opportunities and inclusive work environments for more persons with disabilities.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be with you today, albeit virtually, to celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and I bring warm greetings from the Secretary General. The Secretary General's vision is clear: an organization that leads by example on disability inclusion, a true catalyst for change. Yet, we cannot promote the implementation of international norms and standards if we are not doing it from within. Equally, we cannot carry out our mandate efficiently if we are not representative of the diversity of the people themselves. Accessibility is a fundamental prerequisite to the inclusion of persons with disabilities in our workplaces and in our societies at large. If there is no accessibility, there is no inclusion. And accessibility in our headquarters will not mean much if it does not reach each and every country office around the world. The United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy outlines the necessary steps we must take to be more inclusive, and it has an accountability framework that measures how we do it. I will say candidly that in 2019, we really started from a rather low base. For example, work and accessibility was happening in pockets, but was mostly ad hoc. Yet, the strategy has spurred enthusiasm and willingness among UN staff to address disability inclusion in a systematic way. I am pleased to say that as a result, we have seen concrete advancements, particularly over the last year and in spite of the pandemic, across our programs as well as our operations and from headquarters to the field. Our entities and country teams are establishing foundational policy frameworks, as well as practical tools and resources. Entities and country offices are taking steps to address both physical as well as digital accessibility, which has become so critical in this COVID-19 world, in their programs as well as in their operations. If our offices are accessible, more people with disabilities can be part of the UN's workforce, and our staff will be much more likely to partner with organizations of persons with disabilities, which would also enrich our programs. This is only the beginning of our work, and we do have a long way to go. Moving forward, collaboration and partnerships with all of you, the private sector, governments, civil society, will be critical to build on the learning and years of work you have already undertaken to build inclusive and accessible environments. And of course, the foundational element required to truly achieve disability inclusion will be ensuring the full and active participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organizations in all that we do. We look forward to working together with all of you to build an inclusive, sustainable, and accessible world for all. Thank you very much.
Next, we will hear from Mr. Vladimir Shuk, who has 19 years of progressive and diverse career experience implementing the rights of persons with disabilities and international development, as well as personal experience with disability. He started his career in Serbia by establishing a grassroots organization of young people with disabilities. Mr. Shuk will answer a question in a pre-recorded video of what role do you see for civil society, more specifically, organizations of persons with disabilities in the context of disability inclusion, specifically this partnership.
Good evening. My name is Vladimir Shuk and I'm Executive Director of the International Disability Alliance. I would like to welcome you to this reception as one of the co-hosts. It is a great honor and pleasure to be here with you, unfortunately only virtually. This year's International Day of Persons with Disabilities theme is recognizing the leadership of persons with disabilities. This is highly important for International Disability Alliance, as we are a representative organization of persons with disabilities. We have 14 large regional and global networks through which we represent more than 1,100 national organizations from 182 countries of the world. And many of you know about IDA, and I would like to thank you for your long-standing partnership. Together, we have achieved so much. We could celebrate so many progresses on the promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities in the UN and everywhere around the world. Following the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2015, we celebrated adoption of Agenda 2030, which for the first time included persons with disabilities in development agenda. And then many other good news followed, such as UN guidelines on inclusion of persons with disabilities in humanitarian action has been adopted. UN Security Council, for the first time, included persons with disabilities in its deliberation and adopted Resolution 2475. And then United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy was as well recognized and adopted in 2019. And this is all great news. And then, unfortunately, the COVID pandemic hit. And we were very quickly reminded that discrimination is very much alive, as persons with disabilities were disproportionately affected from the very first moment of the pandemic. It also reminded us that the job is not done and that we have to do much more. And I believe that we need to do this job together. Today, I would also like to reflect on a partnership that we are building with UNDCO, which is one of the co-hosts of this event as well. We are trying to advance on the implementation of the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy and to bring the promises of this strategy to the national level. And we are trying to do so by pairing organizations or persons with disabilities at all levels with the UN, with the UN system. I think that people in this room are committed. I believe that people in this room know what is most important for people with disabilities. And I would like to once again invite you to join us and to work even more than what we have done thus far. We are looking at the second Global Disability Summit in February next year, and I invite you to make meaningful commitments towards this summit. Once again, I would like to welcome you to this reception and to wish you wonderful time. Thank you very much.
And now we are about to have a live perspective from the field. Pelgrina Numba serves in UNDP in Namibia. She was initially recruited through the UNDP UN Volunteer Talent Program for young professionals with disabilities, funded by the government of Sweden, and has been working on the UN partnership on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities project since July 2020. It is my pleasure to welcome Ms. Numba via Zoom. And Ms. Numba, what has been your experience working for the UN as a person with a disability? And what role do you see for the UN and staff with disabilities to contribute to advancing disability inclusion in and outside of the UN?
Masters of Ceremony, thank you for the opportunity that I was granted. His Excellency, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to observe the protocol already established. I am Pelgrina Numba, as already introduced. When I joined the UN, it took me a while to find my way. I had difficulty finding my way from the main entrance to the UNDP office and to move around freely through the entire UN building because there are no landmarks or braille markings that someone with a visual impairment like me can use for direction. Thankfully, that have changed as I worked with Operations Collie to make the UN Namibia country office building more accessible for someone like me. It is still difficult for me to at times take part in online meetings, surveys, etc., as not all the ICT tools we use are disability inclusive. The UN Namibian country office has at least been able to identify a colleague to support me at times. But the question is, what happens when this colleague is not around or occupied with her own duties, as she is a UNDP Common Service associate? What I really need as someone with a visual impairment is a dedicated personal assistant. Another challenge I faced when first hired was getting my own office space. The UNDP HR officer didn't understand why I needed a separate working space while I was just a UNV. However, as a person with a visual impairment, I need to concentrate on what I am doing in a quiet environment because my ears are my eyes at the same time. Thankfully, after communicating with the HR working space, the UN and persons with disabilities, the role of the UN and persons with disabilities in advancing disability inclusion is that I think it is important for persons with disabilities to work for the UN and to be involved in disability-related projects, because we as persons with disabilities then understand how, when and what must be done on disability-related projects are the ones that would give these projects the right needed attention. If these projects are led by persons without disabilities, what they will do will just be based on assumptions. And at the very least, if persons without disabilities lead disability-related projects, they should be people that have at least studied disability-related courses
Mhm.
or have received additional training on disability-related matters.
Mhm.
Now, I'll move to the support, my support for this partnership. So in my conclusion, I would like to say that I think this global strategic partnership is very important because we have to do better at employing persons with disabilities. Supporting persons with disabilities as staff in ensuring that our premises, activities, and communication are inclusive and accessible for all, including mostly those with disabilities. And I, as a person with a disability, fully commit. I fully commit myself to supporting the implementation of this initiative because of its positive impact that it will bring to the lives of persons with disabilities. Once more, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for giving me this opportunity to share with you my little presentation. Thanks and over.
Thank you so much, Ms. Numba, for joining us, for your commitment, and for being with us live at such a late hour in Namibia. And now we have a perspective from leadership, again, live via Zoom. Since September 2018, Mr. Sanaka Samarasina has served as the United Nations Resident Coordinator in the Republic of Fiji, with multi-country coverage of 9 other Pacific Island countries. Before this appointment, Mr. Samarasina served in Belarus as the UN Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative and UNFPP Representative from 2013 to 2018. We have asked him to join us today because of his work and experience of inclusion in the field. Mr. Samarasina, based on your experience as a senior representative of the UN, we would like to hear the impact, what impact you believe this partnership can have at the country level.
Thank you very much, Kara, and good evening, friends. As we say from Fiji in the Pacific, Bula to all on a sunny Saturday morning here in the Pacific. Special greetings to my good friend, President Shahid from the Maldives. We started to do some work on greater inclusion during my short time there, working in the office there, and Shahid at the time was a Speaker of Parliament. When I was asked to make a few comments about what my experience has been, I wanted to tell you a couple of short stories. I started my career in the UN as a UNDP national officer. I always say as a NOB step nothing, because these things sometimes count in our organizations, back in 1999. And then I went on to become a human rights policy advisor for Asia Pacific, based out of Bangkok, covering 26 countries. And of course, being a journalist and human rights lawyer, I thought I knew inclusion, and I thought that all the advocacy work that I was doing was fantastic, especially and including on people with disabilities and removing barriers. But I didn't really quite appreciate the kinds of barriers, especially the physical barriers, but also the financial and emotional, psychological barriers that our staff had in our UN offices until I went back to the same office in Sri Lanka to work on tsunami recovery in 2005. And during my time there, I had an injury and I was walking around with the help of crutches. And it was only then that I fully appreciated how difficult it is for somebody with a disability to maneuver around the UN offices, just as the previous speaker, Pellegrino, mentioned. And I was on crutches, so I could only imagine what it was like if somebody was in a wheelchair. My previous duty station in Belarus, it was an office where the UN had occupied for 25 years. And one day I remember at a staff meeting asking my team, why is it that we have no people with disabilities working in our office? Can we go out there and do some headhunting? And I still recollect one of my colleagues with great sincerity said, well, you know, even if we want people with disabilities to come and work in our office, they don't want to come and work for us or in this office. And I asked the question, how are jobs being advertised? They said, oh, on the website or in a newspaper. And I was saying, well, how is it possible for a person who's visually impaired, who doesn't have devices to interpret or a person to help, to even know that we have a job? We didn't have a toilet that was wheelchair accessible or a ramp. So of course people don't want to work for the UN. It was a curious thing when I first started there. I noticed that the elevator in that building started from the first floor, not from the ground floor. And we used to have colleagues coming from DPOs being carried one flight of stairs by drivers and security guards before they could take the elevator. Of course, it is undignified for both those who were being carried as well as those who were doing the carrying. And I always ask myself, how is it possible that we can adjust the situation? So I got into the elevator one day and there was a person who pressed two buttons at the same time. And I said, well, where are you going? If you press two buttons, you know, you're not going to go anywhere. And he said, no, I'm going to the ground floor. And I said, but this elevator doesn't go to the ground floor. And he said, yes, of course it does. You just press two buttons and then you go to the service entrance, which is on the ground floor. It was amazing to me. In fact, that elevator actually went down to the ground floor, but there was a wall that prevented people who come from the front entrance to actually know that you could enter the elevator and the building from the ground floor. So all it took was just to break the wall. And for 25 years, nobody broke the wall. I mean, I say this because it's really about breaking walls, and sometimes it's simple as that. So we went about changing the whole building. This is in Belarus. And it didn't take a lot of money. It really didn't. I think we got something like $10,000 from UNDP at the time. And we went about getting toilets, putting up ramps. And it's also very interesting that Pellegrino was talking about how difficult it is for her, because when we started, we realized that we were only looking at a certain type of disability and accessibility, and it was for people with wheelchairs, but not for persons who are visually impaired or hearing impaired. So we brought in a team of architects who were actually disabled. They had their own company. We brought in DPOs and of course the UN. And we started this partnership to reimagine what this office could be. And with $10,000, we had tactile paving, ramps, we had audio in the elevators, we had, of course, sign language interpreters in our meetings and so on. We had bars on the walls so people who were visually impaired could walk through. But you know, at the end of the day, as also Pellegrino said, it's about having people with disabilities in the office. It's not just about the infrastructure. It's about changing minds and hearts and minds. And that you can only do through greater interaction and inclusion in the office. I remember as the Prime Minister of the country saying to us, he thought he understood disability inclusion, but it was only when he had a minister on his cabinet that he fully understood what it is to have a person with disabilities facing all these challenges you could see every day. So
Mr.
we started,
Samarasina, you're so right. It's true. And I thank you so much for joining us. I especially thank you for sending some of that Fiji Saturday sunshine. I'm a visitor to New York and I'm freezing. So thank you. And thank you for joining us all the way from Fiji live. Again, I can't imagine the hour. Now I would like to open up the floor for a few brief comments. And we have a few people who we will call out. We will ask you to first please introduce yourselves and please keep your comments brief so that we can include as many people as possible. First, we are going to hear from David Handera, Amtrak. We're switching a mic.
Thank you very much. I'm David Handera. I'm with Amtrak. I am their Vice President of Stations, Facilities, Properties, and Accessibility, that keyword accessibility. This is an exciting time. I'm humbled to be here, and I'm also, I just want to identify a couple things that I've jotted down here. First of all, I'm encouraged by the UNDOC's effort to scale accessibility inclusion throughout the country offices. It's extremely important that it's being viewed across multiple sectors. We're talking physical assets as well as technology and of course HR. I was brought into Amtrak 4 years ago because they had accessibility problems. And we had one station that was accessible 4 years ago. Today, we have 161 stations. It proves it can be done with determination across the enterprise. I also work closely with Zamir. I guess it was about a year ago with the BOS in presenting some specs in hoping that we can help drive accessibility throughout the globe through all of the offices. And also it's encouraging to hear that 10 countries have signed on, but there's 121 more to go. And that's where we really need to drive this across the board. As myself, as Amtrak, I'd like to help participate and be a partner in this moving forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Handera. That is very exciting news to have that commitment, and we thank you. And now I would like to call on my dear colleague, Fernando Butalo from UNICEF. And Amy is coming to you with a microphone, my friend.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here. I'm reminded of my first job. I am blind, some of you have noticed. And when I started, I had the opportunity to hire somebody who was hearing impaired. And then I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. I cannot see his sign language. He cannot hear me talking. So we got along just fine. We figured it out. But the key thing here is today, nobody interested in inclusion has to do it alone. I was working in an organization for the blind, and I had to suddenly deal with totally new and interesting obstacles, and we figured it out on our own. But none of you are alone. We are working at this together. And UNICEF is implementing on this in an accelerated fashion because all the children in the world deserve it, and because 240 million children with disabilities need it. Thank you, and happy December 3rd.
Thank you, Fernando, so much. Next, we are going to hear from Rick Kessler of Hamilton Advisors.
Hello, everyone. Rick Kessler. I think it was nice saying Hamilton Advisors, but it's really Rick Kessler, the Kessler Foundation today.
Yes.
I'm very fortunate. First of all, it's bad news giving a microphone to a reformed politician because they also said brief remarks. And for politicians, that could be 3 days.
Help me out here,
So,
please.
The bottom line is I'm sort of lucky. My grandfather and father, of course, were pioneers at the UN on this quest. But I, especially over the past 7 years, have seen the UN move the needle across the board. And in the COVID world, We're seeing DS. We're seeing all the different units on digital accessibility, on physical accessibility. So while we all have our individual complaints, the most important thing is to focus on the positive. Those that have known my family story know, it's walk and talk and all those wonderful things, having a mother with catastrophic disabilities. I have a daughter who is disabled. But for me, please applaud yourselves. Keep the momentum going. Every unit lately is moving forward incrementally. Yes, never as fast as I want it, but between technology and the human spirit, you can move it. So I would just encourage those in the disabled community. Yes, we have problems. Yes, we need to change things, but do what the UN is supposed to do. You're the beacon of hope. So please, collectively ask for help, provide solutions, and understand the private sector, the NGOs, all of us together will accomplish those goals, those mindsets that the UN was formed on. So take a second and applaud yourselves. You are moving it, and I have seen it in this COVID world especially. So thank you, private sector, member states, and Aubrey, great speech earlier a little bit. So I'm just telling you, really applaud yourselves. You deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. We appreciate it. You helped me out, so thank you so much for that. And now we are going to hear from Rosemary Calapuracal, who is Deputy Director of UN Development Coordination Office via Zoom.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Honorable Mr. Abdullah Shahid, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency Ambassador Webson, Excellencies, dear guests and partners, a special thank you to the mission of Antigua and Barbuda and the International Disability Alliance for hosting this event and reception on this wonderful day to celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. We're so pleased as the UN Development Coordination Office on behalf of the UN Sustainable Development Group to see UN entities, foundations, private sector and CSOs coming together on this important day. I've really enjoyed listening to the great range of reflections from all of you today. I speak not only as the Deputy Director of the Development Coordination Office, I speak as someone whose career has been impacted and defined by disabilities. I speak as a mother of a son with a very invisible disability, but very real. And I know that what we all are committed to doing is actually to work for a life of dignity for all. And so it encourages me that we are working together with greater optimism and greater determination to advance disability inclusion across UN programs and business operations in line with the UN's disability inclusion strategy. At the country level, I'm pleased that nearly half of UN country teams have adopted disability inclusion services supported by the business operations strategy. And I want to give a shout out to our team who have been tireless advocates, pioneering this kind of push, even though it was never asked of them. And I think that has really made a difference. The experience of our team in Vietnam, Nepal, Indonesia, they've all demonstrated the importance of ensuring that UN operations address accessibility holistically and at all programmatic levels. And indeed, the work that we are doing to have common services at the country level provides a great opportunity. And I also want to acknowledge leadership of resident coordinators such as Sanaka from Fiji, we've just heard from, that really makes a difference, ensuring close consultation and partnership with persons with disabilities and their representative organizations. As USG Menendez said in her video, We need to be representative of the populations we serve as the United Nations. And I'm very proud that the UN has now embraced this agenda. When we do enough, and we're not there, when we do enough, then we'll be at a place where we can see people not as defined by their disability, but by what each can contribute, just as with any other person. And we need to be able to arrive at a place where we do this as a reflex for people with physically visible disabilities, so we can feel proud, as well as those with psychosocial or who have neurological disabilities, like my son, whom you probably couldn't tell, but whose disability is limiting, but who does not consider himself defined by his disability. The continued support of people and organizations such as you, the support of member states, philanthropic organizations, and the private sector will be so critical to advance inclusion in both the UN's operations and programs. Keep up the pressure, keep us on our toes, and I hope we can continue the conversation beyond today's event and continue to find ways to work together to move this important agenda forward jointly. Thank you and have a very nice evening.
Thank you. You know, 8 years ago, when I came to the United States with UNICEF, I thought I would never be able to work in the field again. But thanks to this partnership, I can dream of returning once again. So dear friends and guests and partners, I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers and a special thank you to the Antigua Barbuda Mission, the International Disability Alliance, Business Innovations Group of the UN SDG, Kessler Foundation, UN Foundation, and the many UN agencies and disability teams that made this event and the partnership possible. And with that, the presentation part of our program has come to an end. For those of you who are online, we invite you to reach out to us so that we can continue this conversation offline in the coming days and weeks. And for those of you who are here with us in person, we welcome you to spend the next hour together and explore ways in which we can come together to move this partnership forward. And in the spirit of this year's theme for International Day of Persons with Disabilities, namely leadership and participation, I urge everyone to take this opportunity to leverage our strengths and resources and to make a lasting impression on advancing disability inclusion in all countries where the UN operates. Thank you, shukran, arigato, obrigada, gracias, merci beaucoup, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.